Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm Robert Winfrey. I'm your host for this show, whenever you happen to listen to it. Beauty of on-demand audio, whenever you want. Tonight we will be it's a quick preview show. We'll review last night, early morning, depending on where you are in the world. The UFC's debut in Russia for UFC Fight Night 136. It was better than I thought it would be. I think the fights that if you looked at this and went, oh, that's probably got a good chance of delivered. And the stuff that you looked at and kind of went, yeah, not so much, it kind of went, yeah, not so much. We will also have a preview of UFC Fight Night 137 when the UFC returns to Brazil. This card's a little yeesh. I have looked over it. It's not complete yeesh, but there's a lot of yeesh. Yeah. There's a lot of just kind of... So we'll go over both of those, and of course, all the major news that's come out over the last week. You guys know the format by now, I assume. Back with me is my usual partner in crime, 411 Mania's resident jack of all trades, Jeff Harris is here. Jeff, how are you doing?
It should be noted I'm standing on wet grass and not cement.
Oh, that was hilarious. All right.
And you have to brace yourself to keep from getting knocked over by strong winds on wet grass. Otherwise, you might die.
I mean, the first part of that is very correct. You do want to brace yourself, but, I mean, the might die is such a loose statement. I mean, you might die getting hit by
I was exhausted. I was exhausted, Robert. What do you want from me?
Oh.
What do you want? You want me to tell the truth about the weather?
That would be nice.
I was exhausted. Come on. I'm Jeffrey Harris. Good evening, everyone.
For those unfamiliar with the joke Jeff and I are referencing, there's a video of a weatherman reporting on the hurricane that hit landfall on the east coast of the United States, and he's pretty clearly exaggerating the severity as a couple of guys just... Don't get me wrong, there's driving rain and the wind is non-trivial, but
there's clearly some strong wind and rain, but it's not enough to knock you over.
Yeah, he's exaggerating for the camera. And a couple of guys kind of walk by in the background and show off that he's...
And the camera even zooms back. Just seeing these two people just strolling around casually in the background.
That cameraman must have had it with that weatherman's crap.
While Mike Siddell is hanging on for dear life on wet grass.
All right. With that out of the way, let's jump in.
I had my fun.
Let's jump into Fight Night 136. The main event...
UFC's debut card in Russia.
Drew 22,600 people.
Well, I mean, it was the first UFC card in Russia. I mean, what does Russia typically have in the way of MMA? It's M1. So even like a C-level UFC card is better than like than an A-level M1 card, you know?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'd completely agree with that, but the sentiment is...
Oh, my God.
I've seen some really crappy C-level UFC cards, and I've seen some really good M1 cards. That's all I'm saying.
Well, then what do you call... So, was this a C-level or a D-level card to you?
From the UFC? C+.
This one.
This one?
I'm just saying this is still generally better than what Russia typically has to pass for MMA over there.
On average, probably, yeah. But they also have, and again,
you had some good talent on this card.
Well, the other thing about M1 and a few of the other like Russian promotions, again, there's M1. I think ACB runs in Russia, depending on the time of year type thing. They have good, talented fighters. There's a lot of guys who wind up in the UFC that come through those promotions.
Dude, Rustam Kabalov is back. That's exciting.
He never left.
He's been out of it a while.
No, he just...
He's inconsistent. I mean, he's inconsistently inactive. So, I mean,
again, he never left. He kind of seemed to have hit his ceiling anyway.
First fight in over a year, so I mean it's been a while.
Yeah. Anyway, your main event, the only underdog from all of this card to win. Alexei Oleinik.
Who I picked to win.
You did.
By the way.
Alexei Oleinik defeats Mark Hunt via rear naked choke, 4:26 of the first round. Again, not a whole lot to go on here. It was, again, about a round of slower paced heavyweight action. I won't say it was boring. There were a couple of boring fights on this card. This was not one of them.
Oleinik is not like an elite level, but I mean, Mark Hunt kind of isn't either, you know?
Yeah, I think there were two things that kind of played into how this fight went. One was Mark Hunt landed that really, really hard right hand, and Oleinik just ate it.
Which props to him for eating that.
Yeah, I was shocked because he looked at he got hit flush. He looked at Mark Hunt and he gave him a thumbs up.
Even in old over the hill, Mark Hunt is still a pretty dangerous Mark Hunt.
I was really shocked that Mark Hunt gave up on the leg kicks as quickly as he did, because those were having a very profound effect on Oleinik. He was limping and stance switching after just like 3 of them. I mean, Mark Hunt can kick, and he landed a couple of those to the calf of Oleinik, and normally you'd be careful with leg kicks at distance because you're worried about being taken down or countered with punches. Oleinik's not really a threat for takedowns from the outside. Most of his takedowns are clinch-related. I was really surprised he kind of let off on those when he did, because he was having a lot of success with those. But they both kind of got close and swung. They both landed. It was a clubbing, almost like clothesline with the forearm from Oleinik that off-balanced Mark Hunt. Oleinik dove on him, Hunt got back up, Oleinik got his back, drug him backwards, got both hooks, and Oleinik is very much a lights-out ground practitioner. That is his wheelhouse. He's an incredible grappler, especially for a heavyweight. Not the best ever, but an incredibly high-level grappler, all things considered. And if you need another example, look at his choke finish here. There must be something to his squeeze, man, because he doesn't always get himself in the most technically correct positions. Mark Hunt was really close to turning into him. That's one of the reasons I think he left his neck exposed the way he did, was he was trying to kind of swim and turn into the guard of Oleinik, and between the fence being where it was and Oleinik's squeeze, he just ran out of time in the choke to actually get out of it. I mean, the Travis Brown choke from Oleinik is another one.
He is a master of sport and combat, Sambo.
Oh, yeah.
He's a 4th-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, again, phenomenal grappler. Always has been. That's always been his bread and butter.
And look, throughout his career, Hunt tends to not do well against grapplers. He just doesn't.
No, that's always been one of his big weaknesses.
Not always, but typically it's his biggest weakness.
And in somewhat fairness to Hunt, this was his first submission loss in, 8 years?
Yeah, it's been a while, but, I mean, he went through a stretch in his career where he had, a ridiculous... He got submitted by Sean McCorkle in his UFC debut.
That was actually the last time he was submitted, was the McCorkle fight.
Okay, so yeah, it's been a while, but let's see, how many he has 7 submission losses total on his record. So in zero knockouts. So you know what that tells me, Robert, is the way to beat Mark Hunt is by submission more often than not.
Now, Hunt's been knocked out. Once.
Oh, but, right. Yeah.
A couple of times. Well,
no, he has no submission wins, excuse me.
No submission wins. Yeah, no. No submission. If they are, they're by submission.
Look,
by
he
punches.
Has 7 submission losses versus 5 knockout losses. So, but look, he wasn't finished in Curtis Blades, but that was an area Curtis Blades was readily able to exploit. And I think a seasoned grappler like Oleinik, that's an area he can exploit. and he did a good job.
Yeah.
Granted, look, Hill is 44, and his career has defied the odds for many years. And in many ways, it still does, but he's still 44, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and Oleinik's 41 with, what, over 60 MMA fights? I mean, these are two of the old guard.
And a lot of those fights were against tomato cans in Russia.
Again, but that's still a lot of fights. I mean, even against lower level opposition, that's a lot of fights. I mean, he had a couple of like one night tournaments, but again, even with that, that's a lot to put your body through. And that,
I don't think Oleinik is. I mean, this fight is going to move him up the ladder, but he's not going to be contending for the title.
No, and I mean, even if he did, he'd lose badly. But you're talking about a guy with over 60 fights with an incredibly high winning percentage, over the age of 40, and even at heavyweight, where you can compete that longer.
It's kind of like Daniel Kelly having some success.
Yeah, there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to it.
And look, also it's heavyweight. It
certainly helps.
Yeah.
But again, not a bad way to cap off the evening. I think, if memory serves, there was only one Russian fighter who lost all night, and that was on the prelims. The rest of them...
Krylov lost.
He's Ukrainian.
Oh. Same thing.
Not even.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. He lives in Russia. He lives in Russia.
I'm just saying, there's only a war going on in the Crimean Peninsula.
Okay.
That.
He's of Russia. He's also of Russian descent.
Well, there's a fair amount of overlap, but his nationality is Ukrainian.
He's Russian-Ukrainian then. So I'm counting it. I'm sorry. Lives in Russia, Russian heritage.
He doesn't claim Russian nationality.
I mean,
he's Ukrainian.
Maybe his Wikipedia page doesn't, but
he comes out when
then why does he live in Russia?
Because he wants the best training. The same reason a bunch of Brazilians live in the United States. They're still Brazilian.
All right.
But again, a good way to cap off the night.
He's born in Ukraine, but he's of Russian descent. So, I mean, I'm just saying, someone would call that, in the U.S., someone would call that Russian American, or Chinese American. So why does this distinction bother you so much, Robert?
Because he claims Ukrainian. Like if he was the one saying no, I'm Ukrainian Russian or whatever, fine.
When did he make that claim?
I don't think he's ever said he's Russian. I mean,
but you're saying it like he's made a public statement.
He comes out with the Ukrainian flag.
Okay.
If he wanted to, he could come out with the Russian flag. He could come out with a dual flag if he wanted.
Okay.
I mean, Oleinik is Russian with Ukrainian heritage. He claims Russia. He's Russian.
All right. So there you go.
Krylov is Ukrainian with some Russian heritage. He claims Ukrainian. He's Ukrainian.
All right. Well, he still lost. He was the hometown guy. Arguably, he was the hometown guy last night, and he still lost. So, I'm standing by my statement.
I mean, he was the local. He was the only other local that lost, but he wasn't.
Okay,
but there was only one Russian that lost. Anyway, since you brought up Krylov,
we need to pay attention to Jan Blachowicz after this current run, or do you think this current run he's having is just systematic of how gutted light heavyweight is right now? Because earlier in his career, his record was nothing special, but now he's like winning fights back to back like never before.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the co-main event, Jan Blachowicz submits Nikita Krylov with an arm triangle choke in the second round. I think there's a couple of things that contribute to Blachowicz's resurgence after that horrible run he had. One is his team.
Lost to Poker Jack.
He did. No, he beat Poker Jack. That was his only win during a 1-4 run. He lost to
Pat Cummins. Pat Cummins. That's nothing to be proud of.
No, it isn't. And the best he could have hoped for was a draw in that fight. Because he should have had a 10-8 round in the first. My issue with the scoring in that was not that Cummins won, because you could argue Cummins 10-8 in the third, but that only one judge gave Blachowicz a 10-8 first round, which he had clearly earned.
But, like, Devin Clark, Jared Cannonier, like, maybe those aren't, the toughest fights, but Manawa and Krylov, those are pretty, like, maybe not, like, legit wins, but those are pretty good wins. Wouldn't you agree?
Manawa's a legit win. I mean, for the division especially.
Right.
And the Krylov win is certainly, it's non-trivial. It's a good win.
Good win.
Again, there's a couple of things. One, the division sucks. There's no getting around it. There's no getting around it or sugarcoating it. Light heavyweight is, to put it charitably, in a rebuilding phase. Whether or not they're actually rebuilding is a different story, but that is the phase the division's in.
They've been, like, in a rebuilding phase for, like,
3 years.
Feels like 5 years.
3 to 5, yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they are rebuilding, but that's what they should be doing. He also got back with his old coach. For a while, he left. I forget when exactly, but he switched teams for a while. And that was kind of like during the midst of that really bad run. He went back to his other coach, to his old coaching staff, and now he's on. So I think, having coaches that know how to work with you factors for a lot.
But he's having a nice little resurgence here, or he's having a good run here for. Yeah. This is the best run of his UFC career, so
he has the longest active light heavyweight winning streak.
Light heavyweight's in a bit of an uncertain state right now, but what does this do for him going forward?
I mean, the whole division's weird because, look, Daniel Cormier's never coming back, but they're not going to. I mean, he was heavier than Stipe when they fought. Like, he deliberately put on the weight to be a heavyweight again. I don't think he's not putting his body through.
Here's what's weird. He's fought Latifi, who he beat, and Latifi's ranked ahead of him.
That'll probably change once they update the rankings, but
they could rematch, I guess. Volkan Oezdemir is number 2. They haven't fought, so that could be a decent matchup for the.
Could do that.
I think that's probably the. Yeah.
He said he's willing to fight Gustafsson again. I mean, he got his ass kicked the first time, but
Gustafsson is ranked number 1. He lost to Gustafsson before.
Badly.
Gustafsson
that was not a close
has
fight.
not fought since May 2017. So that's a bit problematic for Alexander Gustafsson right now. So sort of it's a really weird position. And
I mean, you could do Gus and Blachowicz for the interim belt.
I mean, I kind of feel they're going to have to throw Gustafsson some type of bone just because of the Cormier thing, or I don't know. And then there's John Jones. We have no idea what's going on with John Jones.
Not a clue. And I'm not factoring him into the discussion at this point because of that.
Well, all right, but,
I mean, until we know, we can't.
You know what? I've been very supportive of USADA, but I feel their handling of the John Jones thing in the past year has been, let me say, questionable, because how are we this far out and we still don't have a decision or a verdict? How is that possible? Like, what are they waiting on exactly?
I saw some random speculation that the hearing is, like, it's being pushed back by a few different parties so that when it comes out...
Are they waiting for a hearing, or is it a discovery?
I genuinely don't know. Like, there's no one knows what's up with this, because USADA gets to operate with impunity.
I mean, what happened to transparency?
Oh, there was never transparency.
There was. I felt there was before.
No. It just felt like that because that USADA puts out more noise than state testing does. They don't actually say much of anything more than they just put out more.
I feel
they put out more noise.
They've failed to really operate and get this taken care of, and render a decision.
Say about their entire existence at large, but my issues with USADA's.
All that aside, I mean, look. If the sport needed cleaning up, they've been trying to do that. But to me, there's no excuse that this has taken this long, because it's September 2018 now, and this happened. When did we find out about this first time? Like summer 2017?
Might have been longer than that.
I feel like we need these processes need to be expedited, Robert. I mean, like. California, they already had a hearing with John Jones, like months ago, right?
Yeah.
The commission. What is USADA waiting for here?
I have no earthly idea.
All right, and there you go. That's a big problem to me. So,
yeah. I mean, USADA being utilized by the UFC has been problematic. Not to say there haven't been benefits, mind you, but.
Well, I mean, what happened with Verdum didn't even take as long.
It hasn't to this point. USADA's handed down their suspension. I think Verdum's now can decide what he wants to do going forward with it. But that could wind up dragging out too.
It sounds like you think UFC should part ways with the USADA.
I don't know. USADA annoys me. And I would not be, let me put it like this. I wouldn't be sad to see them go necessarily, but I'm not sure I also know that I do not have all the relevant information to really make a stand on that necessarily.
The people who are highly critical of USADA, I would say the UFC was put into a corner and had no choice to do something. Because the outrage, the outrage mob was on them about drug testing. So
yeah.
There was a lot of I hate that I'm saying this, there was a lot of pearl clutching over the drug testing.
There was.
And we can't ignore that.
No, we can't. So, there was a lot of that, and there was a lot of not really understanding what we were getting into. And again, I count myself among this group. I mean, I was not. When they announced USADA, I was not opposed to it.
I remember over the Chael Sonnen thing when he was failing drug tests, and they're like, how can he still be employed? And basically, the outrage mob forced the UFC and Fox Sports to part ways with him. Okay, I can accept that. And then ESPN goes right around and signs Chael Sonnen.
ESPN is
not a peep.
Oh no, well. ESPN's a much bigger organization than.
Do you
Fox
think
Sports
I
1.
give a flying F?
I'm just saying ESPN is significantly less interested in the reaction of the outrage mob.
My point here is you can't be inconsistent. You can't be inconsistently outraged. You know? If you're going to be outraged, fine, but at least be consistent about it.
And I imagine there are still people who are annoyed with Chael Sonnen's employment by ESPN.
That's why people let Rose McGowan have it when those allegations started coming out about Asia Argento, and she's like, "Be gentle. I don't believe it. Let's wait to hear all the facts." Blah blah blah. Like when did
it would have been nice if you'd had that perspective, when you started your little movement.
That's my point. That's my point. If you're gonna be out, all right. If you're gonna be outraged, at least be consistent about it. You can't, because I mean, Joey Diaz said it best. If you're gonna start making those claims, you better make sure your own house is clean.
Yeah.
Cast in the name of God, ye not guilty. He who is without sin cast the first stone.
Now, I don't know if the UFC should keep USADA or not. I don't. I wouldn't be sad to see them go.
Robert, how did you like Jan Blachowicz submitting Krylov?
Blachowicz has really kind of figured out his game, I think, because he's got some really nice top pressure. Does not give a lot of space. And in fairness, Krylov's grappling has always been his weakness.
Right.
So, I mean, I like that.
By Serkinov, too. And Serkinov, unfortunately, hasn't amounted to a whole lot.
Well, and he's losing to guys who are good grapplers. Again, Serkinov's a good grappler. Blachowicz is a good grappler. It's unclear whether or not the average light heavyweight can do this to him, but it's a point of concern, if nothing else.
I think we do need to give Blachowicz credit, though, because he has gotten better.
Yeah.
It's not just that the competition is thinned out, which I think it partly is, but he has gotten better, too.
Yeah, he's learned how to play more to his strengths as a fighter rather than kind of brawling, which he got into a bit. He's got his striking game more technical. He doesn't switch as much for no purpose. And he knows where his strengths are. And he's figured out how to use them better. I don't hate the idea of him being, one half of an interim title fight at this point. I don't like his chances necessarily, depending on the opposition, but he's on a good run.
Make it screw interim, just make it the light heavyweight title. I think you could do worse at this point.
They're not taking that belt off of Cormier yet. I mean, they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't, because they should, but I don't think they will.
Cormier says he's retiring in a few months, so...
Look, they're going to let him keep both belts through the Brock Lesnar fight, so he can be the double champion standing opposite the monster that is Brock Lesnar. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit, but that's what they're going to do.
All right. Well, how were you treated to this, to Andrei Arlovsky gracing the octagon once more?
Yeah, Shamil Abdurakhimov beats Andrei Arlovsky via unanimous decision. This fight sucked. This was low-level heavyweights. Do we keep Andrei
Arlovsky around for as a mascot or what?
I don't know. I don't know what you do with him. I mean,
I kind of feel like you could have brought back Matt Serra for more and gotten more out of it for fighting in New York or something, And Matt Serra, and you know what? If there's one guy I would not have minded coming out of retirement to fight one more time to fight in his hometown, it would have been Matt Serra, Robert.
Yeah, if he could get back into fighting shape, yeah. I don't know. I mean, he had a rib removed or something recently, didn't he?
And, I credit Serra for retiring gracefully,
Yeah.
I wish more guys had the grace, had the ability to retire with the grace that Matt Serra did. But I would have been totally okay if he got in shape. Okay, I'll fight. I'm just going to fight just so I can say I fought in New York.
That would have been cool.
I would have been okay with that.
That would have been really cool.
I would have been okay with that because it wasn't like he was getting demolished toward the end of his career. You know?
No, he wasn't. He had the fight with Matt Hughes that he should have won, and then he lost the rematch.
He wasn't like a broken down mess like BJ Penn is now. And now
BJ Penn's got another fight.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. Like, it wasn't as bad as watching BJ Penn fight now. So, I'm saying on a case-by-case basis of having a legend return, just to, say, a legend's returning to fight at home, I would have been okay with it with Matt Serra, but not Andrei Arlovsky like what we had here. And I have a lot of, and I love Andrei Arlovsky. Great guy, nice guy.
Poor Andrei still hasn't fought in his home country.
Oh, because where is he from? He's from
Belarus.
Belarus.
Yeah, he's from. He's Belarusian.
Formerly the Soviet Union.
He was born under the Soviet Union, I think. But yeah, right. He's from Belarusia, or Belarus, not Russia. He started his career in St. Petersburg.
Oh, Belarus is a different.
It's a different country.
Okay. My apologies. But it's
It-
technically still a local.
Yeah, again, this was as close as he's gotten to fighting in, because he's from Minsk, isn't he? Like, just straight up
Right.
Minsk.
Let me see.
He's Belarusian, I know that, but he's from...
Bobruisk.
Hmm.
Bobruisk, Belarus.
Yeah. And, yeah, he's never actually competed in his home country. Because, yeah, he started out in St. Petersburg, then went to the UFC for his, like, fifth fight.
Mhm.
Was there, went to Strikeforce, World Series, back to the UFC.
I have so much respect for Arlovsky, but I'm just like, why is he still fighting at this point? Because it's not.
He should not. He probably should. I mean, he's not been knocked out in his last couple of fights. Just a good thing for his health.
Right.
But they haven't been good fights. I mean, even the two that he won were not exactly good
He had a
fights.
5-fight losing streak.
He did. And he got finished in 4 of
seven.
those.
He's 2-7 in his last 9.
Yep.
That's an abysmal record. Even at this ridiculous heavyweight division. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably... I think they will give him one more, but... I don't know, man. I mean, he needs to get his nose fixed. Because that's a problem.
He's a fighter. He's in the wrong bit. I mean, if he gets it fixed, it's just going to get jacked up again, you know?
It's at the point where I think it's legitimately affecting his breathing.
He's waiting to hang it up before he gets it fixed.
He might. But man, like the most recent pictures of him, his nose is just way off center. It is wrecked.
I mean, I think Couture has. I mean, it's not quite as bad, but his nose is all jacked up too.
Who was the other one who had a really just destroyed nose at the end of their career?
Wanderlei, but he got his fixed.
Wanderlei got his fixed. There's somebody else who, for the life of me, I can't remember their name, but just like, and when I say destroyed, I don't mean by a fight. I mean like it just healed that way, and he just hasn't had it fixed yet.
I just don't know. Like Arlovsky, he's sturdy. Not like Arlovsky had his little comeback run, you know, and I don't feel like he's in a position to make another comeback run at this point. Because now he's older. Now he's older. He's had so many fights, so many miles. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think he got the chance to have his little comeback run. He had a good little run, and then he lost 5 freaking fights, right? So I'm like, to me it makes no sense for him to keep fighting, but it's not my decision. So.
And again, I imagine the UFC will give him one more. I don't know against who. Maybe someone like Chase Sherman. But yeah, he's really got to be looking at hanging him up. He's past
Speaking of guys looking at hanging him up, a Thiago Alves, man.
Yeah. Just real briefly on Abdurakhimov. I don't know what you do with him. I mean, you could do a rematch with him and Derek Lewis if Lewis loses to Alexander Volkov. But, I mean, he's just a mid-level heavyweight.
Were you impressed with his win at all? Were you impressed with? Yeah.
Not really, but
was it? Did it suck out loud?
It wasn't that bad. Again, I didn't like the fight, but because there was a lot of just rinse and repeat in terms of we back off, we clash, we clinch, maybe somebody gets a takedown, maybe they don't, we break, rinse and repeat. I didn't think this fight was, again, this is probably the worst fight on the card. This and the Kabalov-Johnson fight, but I wasn't like desperately like gouging my eyes out to save myself from it. But, you know, Abdurakhimov's got a solid UFC record. I think he's 4-2. He's had a couple
4-2 at heavyweight.
It's enough to get him ranked near the top 10.
Congrats, Abdurakhimov. You're 4-2 at heavyweight. As much as that means in 2018.
And you just have to match him up, you know, with again, he's a mid-level guy. He's never going to really excel, but
you need those guys.
They do fill out the roster, and it does mean something when you beat them. Again, he may not be the most impressive heavyweight, but it's not easy to beat him, and doing
But
so
beating
is
Arlovsky in 2018, what is like,
oh,
other
that means
than like
almost nothing.
I beat Andrei Arlovsky, a former UFC champion, it doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
Oh no, it means almost nothing. Like you beat Andre so that you don't have to say I lost to Andre in 2018.
Right.
But yeah, since you mentioned Alves, kicking off the main card for whatever distinction you want to draw for a Fight Pass card, Alexei Kunchenko defeated Thiago Alves via unanimous decision. I was a little surprised this wasn't split. 130-27 and 229-28.
Who did you score it for?
I believe I scored this for Kunchenko, but there were a couple of close rounds. Let's see if I can. I'm pretty sure I scored it for Kunchenko, but I mean, Alves had some moments in terms of. I mean, he actually got back to his leg kicking game. His takedown defense was, kind of back on point.
Well, I guess that's better than his fights with John Fitch and GSP.
For whatever value that has, yeah. Oh, I scored this a draw. Jeez, I forgot that. Because I had the first round 10-10. It was, it was one of those rounds.
Look, I think I think there's a huge lack of honest 10-10s and 10-8s in this sport in terms of judging.
Yeah, I had
I think if 10-10s and 10-8s were distributed more when we should, I think we'd have less judging problems. I wouldn't solve the problem, but I think we would have less than what we do now.
That's entirely possible.
And I think the rule system generally inhibits scoring 10-10s and 10-8s.
It's one of the reasons It's one of the reasons I like the language changes to scoring under the new system, because they actually are more encouraging of 10-8s.
Mm-hmm. Very fair.
And we were under the new system for this one, there were a few that should have been 10-8s that kind of surprised me. But I mean, Alves has been at the UFC level for a really long time. He should be thinking about hanging him up. I mean, Kunchenko didn't set the world on fire here, but I mean, it was a solid enough debut. I mean, once he got going, like toward the second half of the second round and then most of the third, he actually looked pretty good. He kind of seemed to finally find himself and get going with his offense. And I don't know that he'll make a whole lot of himself in the UFC. He's over 30, which means it's more on the unlikely side if you debut at that point, but he's a solid enough addition to the division. At least for the moment. And yeah, Alves, there was a time when he was one of the best.
Send him to Bellator?
I don't know. They'll probably give him one more fight, but
the thing is, welterweight is not one of the division hurting for names and guys at this point. No, that's Alves' problem right now.
But I think they'll give him one more, just because if he gets 3 in a row, it's easier to justify.
I would give him one more because he's Thiago Alves. Yeah. He fought GSP for the title. I
mean, he had that really
Thiago Alves, yeah, he used to be the brightest young stars of the division, no question. But that time was about 10 years ago, Robert.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
That was 10 years ago when he was, the budding young star and knocking out Kara Parisian and Matt Hughes and beating Koscheck. Those days are past.
Yeah. He's
long. And they just passed, they are long past. Long.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd give him one more, but yeah, he needs.
I'm fine to give him one more try.
But look, if he gets 3 in a row,
he lost to a nobody here. And I'm not saying Kunchenko is not a good fighter or can never be a good fighter, but he lost to a guy.
Losing to a debutante is never good.
Right. He lost to a guy who's never fought in the UFC, has way less fights than him too. That's the other thing. So it's not a good look for Alves. Right.
It really isn't.
Especially coming off the Melender loss. So he's really got to make something happen in his next fight.
Or, he'll wind up in Bellator. If he were...
He could probably do. I think he could do okay-ish in Bellator.
He could do okay in Bellator if the PFL sticks around for another season and they do a welterweight tournament. He should look into that.
Yep.
I mean, that's relatively easy money for him,
It's
given
not,
the
and
given
it's
the
not
opposition.
meant to be a knock on Alves, but look, he hasn't been doing too good these last several years.
I mean, his last win was what? Washed up Cote, and Cote retired immediately after.
Yeah. And that was a while ago.
I mean,
it was like a year
and
a half.
He's just near the end, and it sucks, but
yeah, I mean, it happens to everyone at some point. It's just timing. That's
age gets everybody. Sometimes it takes longer, but it always does.
We'll just do Burning Desires for the prelims, and then move on.
Yeah, because there were a few. Khalid Murtazal. How do they pronounce this? Murtazaliv. I think that's how they pronounced it. Defeats CB Dalloway via TKO between rounds 2 and 3. This was a horrible non-stoppage by the referee. Setting aside the action, which was all right. I mean, Dalloway was never all that great, but he's even kind of a shell of that. He's just older, he's slower, he's softer. This fight should have been stopped 20 seconds before it was. At the end of the second round, Dalloway's basically on either his face or a hip, just kind of covering up, and
all he was doing was covering up.
I mean, covering up is an important part of intelligent defense because it indicates that you are aware that you're being hit and trying to do something about it. But that can't be with very few exceptions. There are a few situational exceptions, mind you, but this wasn't one of them. You have to be doing stuff with the rest of your body.
You know what John McCarthy told me once after Carano versus Cyborg?
What was that?
That was in 2009, so this was some years back. But he told me, like, people thought the fight should have continued and was stopped too early. And McCarthy didn't ref that fight, but he says that was the right call because all Carano was doing was covering up, and her position had basically mean all she was doing was giving up, basically.
Yeah. Again,
from a prone position.
You do have to do more than, especially if you're on the mat. Again, if you're standing and you're kind of cornered and you need a moment to find an angle to escape, a little bit different.
If you're in a turtle position and all you're doing is covering up, that's not necessarily intelligent defense.
And there's
you have to improve your position, and you have to get out of danger.
Yeah, and you also have to look. I mean, there's some weird kind of nebulous wording about it, but you do, or thought behind it. You have to look like you still want to fight, type of thing. And that's not the only thing, because there's a lot of people who have been stopped because they were not in a position to defend themselves and complained about it, which is, again, you don't have to be completely...
Versus, like, the Carano Cyborg fight, people were, like, so emotionally attached to Gina Carano. They were like, oh, give her the extra 5 seconds, let the fight keep going.
Yeah,
instead of letting her get bludgeoned by those shots by Cyborg. Yeah, and I'm saying there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion that goes into commentary and things like this. And on one hand, I understand it. On the other hand, we have to see what happened here. And by every indication, CB Dalloway was not intelligently defending himself.
No, I mean,
long before the fight got stopped.
Yeah, again, at least 20 seconds at a minimum. It's probably closer to 30. If he'd been doing,
and look, I like and respect Herb Dean, but this is not the first time something like this has happened with him. The first,
it happens to everybody, but this was pretty egregious.
Another, I don't know if you would say egregious, but I was really kind of. I disagree with how he handled the Weidman Rockhold stoppage.
Yeah,
and that fight much longer than it should have. Way much
Yeah,
longer.
that fight easily could have and arguably should have been stopped.
In the second round. It should not. I don't
third?
think it should have even gone to the third.
Was it the second or the third?
I believe it was stopped in the third, but I don't think it should have gone past the second.
No, it was the fourth. It was stopped in the fourth.
Oh, okay.
So it was the end of the third round when Weidman had him mounted and was or when Rockhold had him mounted and was just.
It should have been that fight should have been stopped much earlier. All right, it was the fourth. It should have been stopped much earlier, like in the third round, basically.
Yeah, that finishing flurry should have. I can definitely see the argument that it should have.
Because Weidman was on. He was on his back, and all he was doing was eating shots, unprotected shots, and he wasn't really defending himself. He basically, in my opinion, he had basically given up, based on my interpretation of the rules. So,
in this instance, I mean, Dalloway wasn't doing anything with his lower body. Not even an indicator that he was trying, and Murtazalev was stopping him.
Then
he was
gave
just
up,
laying there getting hit.
And then he wasn't even able to answer the bell for the next round. So
yeah, after the round ended, Dalloway kind of rolled to his knees. Didn't really. I mean, he was done. Herb kind of looked at him and said, I have to see you get up. You can't just lay there between rounds. You have to get up if you want to keep fighting.
It just seemed like a weird.
And Dalloway called it off. I mean, Herb asked Dalloway, "Do you want to fight?" And apparently Dalloway said something to the effect of no, and that's what actually waved it off. But bad non-stoppage. That really should not have. He took at least 15 to 20 blows.
I'm not saying you should like remove Herb Dean's license or anything or suspend him indefinitely, but things like this definitely have to get reviewed, Robert. And I think I've gotten the inkling that commissions do review, controversial finishes and bad calls and judging decisions. I don't know exactly how it gets done, but I believe it does. But I think this definitely needs to get looked at, and some sort of discussion needs to take place at least.
Yeah, this is one of those that was... You should have...
This
is like categorical... Okay, this was a bad non-stoppage.
Show
this fight to people when you want to show them how not to handle this.
Herb Dean saw what Mario Yamazaki did and said, "Hold my beer."
In fairness, he might just know that CB Dalloway is a terrible person and wanted him to die, which I can empathize with.
I don't know. Maybe CB Dalloway hit on his wife or something. I don't know.
I mean... CB could just be... I mean, like, if you have to look at CB Dalloway long enough, you might just kind of go, yeah, I kind of want you to die.
How is CB Dalloway still even in the UFC after all this time? Isn't that a little surprising?
A little. He tends to win the make-or-break fight. Like, he'll go on these losing streaks, and then, okay, you have to win this one, and then he wins.
He gave him a stretch of big fights against Machida and Bisping. He lost both of those. Got knocked out by Nate Marquardt,
yep.
And then he had that. Then he had, I think, that kind of that elevator incident, right? That I think.
Yeah, that messed up his back. Then he fought Ed Herman,
and then that put him out of act. And then he fought Ed Herman.
Then he had the Lombard incident.
Okay.
I still
weird career for CB Dalloway.
Yeah,
weird career for him.
In somewhat fairness to that Lombard situation, I still maintain that was the wrong decision by the ref, but that's neither here nor there. My new favorite up-and-coming bantamweight, Peter Yan, defeated Jinsu Sun via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. I actually had this 30-26 for Yan. I thought Yan did enough in the third to earn a 10-8. Credit to Sun for being incredibly game and just crazy. Because he came to fight, and Yan, especially that third round, man, Yan put the type of beating on him that has stopped people. And would have stopped a lot of other guys in the UFC, but Sun just kind of ate it all. This was a last-minute, well, not last-minute, but this was a late notice thing for Sun coming in. Yan was supposed to fight Douglas Silva de Andrade. I kind of hope they rebooked that, because that's a great fight. But yeah, I'm pretty high on Yan at the moment. He's definitely still a work in progress in a lot of respects, but I liked him when he was in ACB. I like him now still, so good for him. Rustam Khabilov defeated Kajan Johnson via split decision, 129-28 for him, to 129-28 for Johnson, 229-28 for Khabilov. Not a good fight. Just not a whole lot.
But
here.
Khabilov came back and he won, and that's good.
I mean, he's on a 5-fight winning streak, I think.
Right. So I hope here he can be a little more active and get, because he was a pretty exciting fighter when he first came into the UFC.
Yeah.
Remember he suplexed that guy and he broke his thumb?
Well, no, he started out with Vince Pichel, who he just knocked out with suplexes. Then he broke Yancy Medeiros' thumb on a suplex. Beat Jorge Masvidal. Yeah, he had a good run going up until he ran into Benson Henderson.
And
followed that up by losing to Adriano Martins.
Yep.
And he's now on again another 5-fight winning streak, 5 or 6.
Let's see how many he has here.
I think it's 6. I think this is 6 in a row. Yeah.
Man, 6, and he has 9 wins in the UFC. I mean, and that's at lightweight. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, no, he's good.
If he can fight more consistently, he could easily be like, I would call him fringe top 15, honestly.
He's butting up against that area, true.
In
theory, at lightweight,
activity he needs to be a little more active, and he's in a very bloody division. So that's the issue.
And he tends to have. He's had some ho-hum performances even in victory that have kind of stifled his momentum.
I agree, and I mean this wasn't a great performance either.
Mairbek Taisimov, who I'm still relatively high on, missed weight for this fight, which is never good. And he missed by a lot. He weighed in officially at 161, so he missed by 6 pounds, give or take. Yeah, not good. 6 or 7, depending on how strict you want to be about. I tend to actually favor the strict definition of the division, so 7. No, 6. Sorry, it's 6 to go from 155
it's
to
bad.
161.
It's not a good look. But everyone gets one.
Big
so
miss.
If this is, so let this be it for him. Because he is a promising up and comer.
Yeah, I believe this is the first time he's missed weight. So I think part of his, I don't know. Again, it was mishandled. He might have changed his parts of his workout regimen leading up to this fight. He looked much bigger than he normally has. There was a lot more muscle mass on him than I've seen in previous fights. So if he added more weightlifting or whatnot,
he has been fighting overseas for the UFC. So it's not like he was used to fighting in the US, because I think almost all of his recent wins were overseas. Except not in Russia. They were in Sweden, Germany, Croatia.
Sweden, Germany, Croatia, Singapore,
Brazil. So, but look, he has to fix the problem.
Yeah, that's not the kind of miss you can repeat. That's a bad one, but he still won. He's still trying to get to fight in the U.S., which I hope he gets sorted out, because again, I like the guy. He's a really good fighter.
He could be a top star, but we'll see. He's got to figure these things out.
Let's see. Magomed Ankalaev defeated Marcin Prokhnio via knockout, head kick, and punches in the first round. Good to see him get back on track. I mean, he had that one lapse in the Paul Craig fight. He dominated that fight. He had 2 10-8s and was working on his third when Craig got that Hail Mary triangle choke. And even then, if he just held out for that last second and a half, he would have won the decision. Again, it happens. You have a minor lapse in concentration. That's all it takes. But good to see him get back on track. Jordan Johnson defeated Adam Yondiev via arm triangle choke in the second round. Jordan Johnson's a very big middleweight. He'd competed, I think, previously at light heavyweight and was undefeated. He was visibly bigger than Yondiev. And Johnson's a really good fighter, so a bit one-dimensional in terms of being a wrestler, but he's also young in the sport, so that can grow. Ramazan Emeev defeated Stefan Sekulic via unanimous decision, 29-28, 30-27, 30-26. I kind of liked Amiv's debut. It wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. He's pretty good. I'm curious to see where he goes from here. And kicking everything off, Merab Dvalishvili defeated Terrion Ware via unanimous decision, 30-25 across the board. I believe I also had this 30-25. Ware just couldn't stop the takedown. It's not like Dvalishvili was nearly finishing him or anything, because he didn't. But he just completely controlled him, completely nullified him. And I had it 30-25 as well, so I can't complain about that. But Dvalishvili is still just, I don't know, I can't get behind him at all at the moment. He's just so, I don't even know how to describe it. His fighting is just so weird. Anyway, so do you have any other burning desires from that group of prelims, Jeff? Or
I think I kind of hit everything.
Alrighty.
Ready to move on.
Again, that was early morning for me here in the United States, in Mountain Time at least.
Congratulations. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to be that happy with what I did on this one.
Oh, man.
I hate mornings too much to be happy about anything I do on them. I am not, nor have I ever been, a morning person, so...
All right, then.
These cards are like, oh, God, help me get through it without making a complete and utter fool of myself, and we'll count it a win. Thanks to everyone who did read and follow along. Always appreciated. This coming Saturday... Oh, Lord help us, we're back on Fox Sports for their interminably long cards. But UFC Fight Night 130...
Little Nog is fighting. Wow.
What?
Little Nog is fighting.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
I don't consider this a good thing.
Okay.
He's fighting Sam Alvey. That fight's going to suck. It's either going to end...
I like the main event.
The main event's solid. But this card is...
Maybe not its main event worthy, but I like the fight.
Oh, yeah. And if you're doing a lesser... It's a fine enough main event for, I think you mentioned, like a C-level card. I can live with this. But yeah, your main event for this fight is Thiago Santos making his light heavyweight debut, facing top contender, more or less top contender, Jimmy Manuwa. Manuwa's on a 2-fight losing streak, his first ever. He lost to Volkan Oezdemir, then he lost to Jan Blachowicz. Whereas Santos, coming off of a win, I mean, Santos has been so weird, because he goes on these great runs when he's just murdering people of a certain level. Then he takes a step up and just gets blown out of the water.
By David Branch, who's...
Or Gegard Mousasi, or has a massive lapse in focus against, Eric Spicely.
He's a solid underrated fighter, though. I think
all things considered, yeah,
he could win this. He could win this. It wouldn't surprise me if he wins this fight. In fact, I'm picking Santos.
Santos is in this weird spot where he's either underestimated because he loses once he steps up to that level, or he's massively overestimated because he kills people below that level.
He's gonna win this fight.
I don't know. I'm torn. I can see him winning. He's also been a bit chinny in the past and has a tendency to leave himself open. Yeah. So is
Manuwa.
Manuwa's chinny, but he doesn't quite leave the same types of openings that...
Look what happened against Volkan Oezdemir. I mean, look what happened with Oezdemir. Got starched in 42 seconds.
Oezdemir's done that to a lot of other guys, too.
Right.
I mean, he knocked out Serkinov with one punch that looked like it shouldn't have been anything.
Daniel Cormier would not be scared of him if they ever fought at this point.
Daniel Cormier is not afraid of anyone. I mean, even
except John Jones.
Even John, he's not afraid of. He just can't beat him, but he's still not afraid of him.
Right. I'm picking Santos here. He's gonna knock out Manuwa.
They are in Brazil. I'll probably flip-flop on this before the official roundtable, but I don't know. I mean, Santos is He's an average size. He's a good sized light heavyweight, but still more on the average side. Manuwa's pretty thick to the upper body. If Santos stays at kicking range, his kicking game is vastly superior to Manuwa's. But if this gets in close, that's where he struggles a bit, and that's where Manuwa would have the most success. This is kind of a coin flip. In fact, I'm going to flip a coin, because I happen to have a couple right here. Let's see.
Heads, Manuwa.
That is tails, so Santos.
All right. Welcome to the winning side, Robert.
We'll see.
I hope you enjoy it.
We'll see. Again, there still is the actual fight to happen. Next up, this fight was so close to being good. But Alex Oliveira, the Brazilian cowboy, he was supposed to fight Neil Magny, which is a pretty good fight.
At least a fairly legit matchup right there.
Magny, however, was pulled in favor of main eventing Fight Night 140 when the UFC is in Argentina against Ponzinibbio. Another good fight, not complaining about that matchup. The replacement for Neil Magny is the debuting, I believe, Carlo Pedersoli Jr. This borders on unfair. Like, this is kind of a gimme for Oliveira. And
the key thing to the gimme fights is you have to win those fights.
You do. I mean, Oliveira's only losses in the UFC are what?
Because you're still, look, a gimme fight is still arguably dangerous because you're still fighting someone. You know, it's not a wrestling match.
Yeah.
You can't and what I mean is you can't go to sleep in a fight like that.
Yeah, Oliveira's only losses are to Burns, Cerrone, and Medeiros. I got him.
But he's had issues. He's had like the missed weight.
He missed weight at lightweight. I don't think he's ever missed at welterweight, has he?
And then he had the Tim Means thing.
Well, that was him getting hit with the illegal knees, wasn't it?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Means landed the illegal knees.
But he arguably would have lost that fight.
It was not in a good spot when Means had that mental hiccup, and then he bulldozed him in the rematch. Yeah, he missed it lightweight, but he's never missed it well. Yeah, again, I got Oliveira here. I can't unless Pedersoli Jr. is
easy pick for Oliveira. I agree.
All right. Little Nog is back after being vindicated in his drug issues because Brazilian pharmacies, apparently. As
this will be his first fight since November 2016.
Jeez, that's a long layoff. And he's fighting Sam Alvey.
So he's so Nogueira, obviously.
Oh god, this fight either ends quickly,
or it goes on for a sloppy.
It just
sloppy
never
15
ends.
Minutes.
This either ends quickly or it never ends, and it just never stops. It just
look. Nothing against Sam Alvey, but hasn't the gimmick kind of run its course now? You know.
I'm prepared to see how far it takes him at light heavyweight, but it's up there.
I mean,
again, like I said, if I've said before, if Sam Alvey had any physique to him, he should have been a pro wrestler because he connects with audiences so well. But man, his fights are
like that. Like that Volante fight was awful.
The Volante fight was awful. Emmy fight was awful. The Evans fight was awful.
He can connect with the audience. He can connect with the audience, but like the whole I'm just happy to be here, smiling thing, can only take you so far. I feel like it's taken him as far as it can in the UFC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm inclined to think Nogueira wins, but
I credit him. He had a good little run at middleweight. You know, he had a cute. You know, it was cute. That's all it was.
He had a really solid run at one point. He had what?
Right, but he's
7
not.
Wins?
No, he had 4.
I had 4 in a row, but he had 7 overall, right? Because he lost to Watson, won 3 in a row.
Lost to Theodoro and Brunson.
Yeah, he was in the UFC for 3 fights before, for 4 fights before that.
So he was 7 and 3 at one point.
Yeah. Again, he had decent runs,
He
but
had some success, but I mean, and he's won his last two here. But I'm like, to me, it's getting a little tiresome because that Volante fight was just awful,
oh god, it was so bad.
and it seems like he might get a knockout here and there, but if he's not knocking out a guy quickly, he's having just these god awful fights that last forever, as you said. So I'm picking Nogueira. It's gonna be an ugly sloppy 15-minute fight that Nogueira wins by decision.
This is one of the first time Alvy's fought another southpaw, isn't it? Yeah, I'll go with Little Nog, but man, I am not looking forward to this fight. Another fight I'm not looking forward to. Renan Barão. Fighting
Remember when Renan Barão was like one of the scariest fighters on the planet?
Vaguely.
Legit. Now, let's not deny
he had an exceptional run.
He legitimately was one of the scariest fighters on the planet, and he was well on his way to being one of the greats.
I'm not sure he ever got to scariest, but he was absolutely one of the best. Exceptional run.
I mean, and this is what time does to people, you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, he had this huge winning streak. He had some really great performances.
How quickly you forget, Robert?
No, he went on this great run. Some really great performances. He was unbeaten
for how long?
Oh,
he was beaten for over 30 fights.
Yeah, almost 10 years. He was 05 to 14. Yeah, huge amount of time. There was a lot of because he lost his debut, and then for a while the only other blemish was a no contest.
But then he plateaued. Or however you want to quantify it.
I mean, he stopped getting better, and the division didn't.
Yeah.
And now he's 1-4 in his last 5, and his only win is over Felipe Nover, which means nothing.
Either that, or the division was able to catch up with him.
I mean, again, the division kept getting better. He didn't.
Kind of like Ronda Rousey, I think.
Yeah, Ronda. I mean, it happens to a lot of people who are at the top. They don't necessarily know how to improve. Tyson had other problems. But they're giving him... Evander also had other issues, but...
like steroids.
I mean, come on, it's boxing. Every heavyweight's on steroids.
Lennox Lewis.
Also steroids, but yeah, he had the Klitschko brothers, if you want a contemporary example, just profoundly gifted fighters, but there's a point at which the division, even heavyweight for that in their cases, just kind of got beyond them. I guess
Tyson Fury had their issues.
Tyson Fury his issue is that he's crazy. And he's horribly overweight.
Well, all fighters are to some degree, don't you think?
Even amongst fighters, Tyson Fury is out there.
Okay.
And again, horribly overweight. I mean, he ballooned. He was nearly 400 pounds, I think, at one point. I mean, he's just now... Because he had a fight not too long ago, and he still looked horrible. I mean, he won because it was a tune-up fight, but he physically looked horrible. He got well over 300 pounds. After he beat... I think it was Vladimir that he beat, yeah. After that, he got huge physically and just got way out of fighting shape. Just was nasty. But anyway, they're giving Barão the gimme of all gimmies. They have set him to fight the debuting Andre Ewell. I believe debuting Andre Ewell. Ewell is not stepping in on short notice. This is not a replacement thing. This was always the guy that was going to be in Brazil to fight Renan Barão. I mean, I have to pick Barão because this is such a lopsided fight on paper, but I will in no way be surprised if he loses again. I mean, you can't be shocked at this guy losing anymore. You just can't. but this is about as designated a win as you're going to find in the UFC. And I have to, under these circumstances, pick him to still win it. But, man, I am not looking forward to his fights.
I am picking...
Pick you all.
Henan Barao. I'm picking Henan Barao.
All right. And kicking off the main card, Randa Marcos is fighting Mariana Rodriguez. Is this Rodriguez's debut? I am not sure. Marcos coming off of that loss to Ansaroff, but because she has been exclusively in win-loss mode for, 4 years, I imagine she'll take this one. I need to see if because I might be thinking of someone else when I'm thinking with who I think Rodriguez is. Scrolling, where are you? Okay, she's 11-0. Oh yeah, she was on the Contender Series. She might win this fight. Randa's beatable, but Rodriguez hasn't fought a level of opposition that would lead me to pick her consistently, but I won't be shocked if she wins. Let me put it like that. So yeah, I got.
I guess
Marcos.
my problem with Randa is like she's good, but she's so inconsistent. She has trouble putting it together.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot that.
Like her whole UFC career, it's win one, lose one.
Yep, and it was that way for a bit before she got to the UFC.
She's due for a win, so I'm picking Randa.
Yeah. All right, that's the main card. Again, not a whole lot to look forward to there, but the main event's decent, and the co-main event should be fun while it lasts. Beyond that, yeesh. Now, for more of your yeesh on the prelims. Charles Oliveira is fighting.
Hooray!
And, I mean, I have liked Oliveira for significant points of his career because he's a lot of fun.
What he did to Clay Guida.
He tapped out Clay Guida, which forever earns you a place of esteem in my heart.
All right.
I hate Clay Guida. He's fighting Christos Giagos. Giagos is returning to the UFC. He went 1-2 his last time, not 3. He's being set up to lose. This is another Brazilian to win in Brazil and make the crowd feel good. Oliveira should take this by submission.
I got Oliveira.
Francisco Trinaldo is fighting Evan Dunham, and 5 years ago this would have been a great fight. In 2018, it's just an okay fight.
And I think Dunham is planning to retire after this fight, as I recall.
It's about time. He's been there forever. He's got a lot of, years and miles. He's not on the best run right now.
Yeah, he says he's going to retire after Sao Paulo. We'll see if he keeps to that, but we'll see.
I kind of like Dunham here, but I don't know. I mean,
I like Trinaldo.
It's not a bad fight. These two
Trinaldo's
well.
Trinaldo's an old dude, but he's a decent fighter.
Yeah, if you could go back 4 to 5 years, this fight, great fight. One of the legitimately a top 15 lightweights fight. Again, 5 years ago.
I mean, look at who Trinaldo has lost to recently. James Vick and Kevin Lee, top 10 lightweights. So legit lightweights, and that was after he had a pretty impressive stretch of winning.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he went on a really good run.
7 fights, including Paul Felder and Yancy Medeiros.
Yeah.
So,
no, Trinaldo's a solid fighter.
And even though he's 40, I'm still picking him to win this one.
Again, I'm probably going to regret this, but I am going with Dunham here. But that should be, that's probably the best fight on the prelims in terms of a competitive matchup.
Mm-hmm.
At light heavyweight, because I don't know why. Luis Enrique is fighting Enrique is he going back down to light heavyweight? Yeah, he is, after a mediocre heavyweight run. Because he's 2-3 at heavyweight in the UFC. Lost to Ngannou, Tabora, and Arjun Buller. Wonder how he'll do at light heavyweight. They're giving him a pretty easy fight in the form of Ryan Spann, so I'll go with Enrique, but this fight is probably going to... If this doesn't end quickly, it's going to suck. At heavyweight, because it's not enough to have one or the other, we have to have them right next to each other on a card. Just make the audience suicidal. Augusto Sakai, who is making his UFC debut, he won a fight on the... Are we seriously going to turn Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series into the Ultimate Fighter in that, hey, one in every region? Ugh. Anyway, he won on Dana White's Contender Series Brazil Season 1. His only loss is a split decision to Czech Congo. I seem to recall I watched part of that fight and thought he won. If he is who I think he is. Anyway, he's fighting Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman kind of sucks. He's 2-4 in the UFC, a couple of different 2-fight losing streaks. I can't pick Sherman here. I'll go with Sakai. Might be wrong about that. Then on Fight Pass, we have 5 Fight Pass fights. Sergio Moraes is fighting Ben Saunders. Saunders beat Jake Ellenberger, which means nothing, to break a 2-fight losing streak. Yeah, I got Moraes here. Moraes' only UFC losses are to Cesar Ferreira, which was up a division at middleweight, and he got knocked out by Kamaru Usman. But Moraes is pretty solid, so I got Moraes. We have a women's flyweight fight between Maria, spelled differently, or Maria. I'm going with Maria, but with a Brazilian spelling. Bueno Silva versus Jillian Robertson. Robertson won her UFC debut, I want to say. She had a really nice armbar, I seem to recall, somewhere in there. I'll go with Robertson. Jeff Harris's favorite fighter, Hector Lombard, is fighting Talis Ladies. I have no idea
How?
I have no idea why either of these two are still in the UFC.
Well, I think Ladies is going to retire as well, at least. So.
Lombard's on a 5-fight losing streak.
Lombard will probably go back to Bellator.
Again, I thought Lombard got the short end of the ruling stick when it came to the Dalloway fight, but nevertheless,
Lombard's the short end of nothing.
I think that's the only time I've thought he got the short end of something was I thought he was in the right there. I thought the ref ruled that improperly. Whereas Ladies is 2-5 in his last 7. His only wins are over Chris Camozzi, who's a debatable UFC level fighter at this point anyway, and Sam Alvey, and boy, that fight sucked. I want this fight to fall through. If some fight is going to fall off of this card, please be this fight. I got Ladies, but I'm hoping for Lombard because that means the fight ended quickly, one way or the other. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, he's a guy who does not get another one of those unheralded guys, because he is on a 5-fight winning streak. He's 5-1 in the UFC. His only loss was a split decision that very easily could have gone his way. He's a guy that I don't feel gets he's one of those underappreciated guys. And he is fighting Luigi Vendramini? Going with Vendramini until I hear otherwise. Is he supposed to fight anyone else? No, always this fight. Yeah, Dos Santos via murder, death, kill. And kicking everything off, we have the UFC debut of former Invicta strawweight champion Livia Hanata Souza as she fights Alex Chambers. I appreciate Chambers. She's a fun personality, but this is set up for Souza to win, and Souza. I'm always interested to see how some of the transplants from Invicta do in the UFC, because some of them come in and live up to expectations. They continue to grow as fighters. Some of them come in and can't hack it. So I got Souza here. Her only loss was a split decision to Angela Hill. In fairness, I thought Hill won that fight, but she's had a really good overall run. So I got Souza here, but it should be a decent enough way to. But again, she might also, anyone debuting might also crap the bed. So Jeff, there's not a lot to look forward to there. Are there any fights you want to try and sell? Again, this is a
Rice versus Ben Saunders is a decent fight.
Yeah.
For whatever it's worth.
Yeah, Maurice is solid.
And Ben Saunders not a world beater, but he's a solid fighter.
Yeah.
He got Jake Ellenberger out of there for us. Well, almost.
That is not worth anything.
Regardless, I still like Ben Saunders.
Yeah. He's a likable guy. And his fights, he's
talk about a guy who can make a connection with the crowd, and I think he he actually fights better than Sam Alvey at least.
I mean Saunders is rarely in a bad fight, so there is that at least.
So that's it. That's about it, though, really, for me.
Yeah, this is going to be a rough one. But I will have coverage in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania this coming Saturday for that. So yeah, I can look forward to that.
Smoky Joe lost to AJ Styles again. I'm ticked. And they did a screwy finish too.
Oh, of course, because why not?
Well, the finish is that Joe had AJ in the Kahina clutch.
Did they do a dusty finish?
No, it wasn't dusty because they didn't reverse it. But the catch is that Styles pinned Joe
pinned Joe while he was in the clutch.
Yeah, but he was tapping out before the pinfall was counted. So
yeah, that's a dusty finish.
Yeah, so they did it. All right.
They actually brought back the dusty finish for Joe versus AJ.
Me, when they have a situation like that,
well, ideally you have two refs come out and one says somebody won and one says the other guy won, but
and then they reverse it or they continue or like that. That's what a dusty finish means to me.
It's a variation of it enough.
To me, it's like half. It's like half of a dusty finish, basically.
So
and
it's
that really annoys me because
it's a gold dust finish.
And it really annoys me because it's kind of like how many times can you have Joe lose to AJ? I mean, seriously. AJ is the plucky face, and he's winning all the time, and it's getting a little tiresome.
It's a little bit ass backwards, and we also can't have Joe and AJ actually put on a good match and steal the show when we're going to have Braun and Roman engage in just a god-awful affair for 20 minutes.
Sorry, I know this is an MMA podcast, but
That's
I saw
right.
that. It kind of annoyed, and I mean, this is a big reason I don't watch WWE anymore, and I don't subscribe to the WWE Network, and this is why I subscribe to New Japan World. You know?
Yeah.
This is a big because it's stuff like this. And look, I love AJ and Joe, but I mean, come on now.
Yeah, the booking's
this is
not doing them favors.
This is not good booking.
All right. Speaking of not good booking. Just real briefly before we move into MMA news, I watched the entirety of the Canelo versus Triple G fight last night, and
do you feel bad for Triple G?
I feel horrible for Triple G. That guy's been screwed. Now, not for last night. Let me be clear about. Just think about this position that this poor guy's been put in. He's getting up there in years. He's 30. He's well over 30. He's 33, 34, something like that. Fair amount of miles. This guy had a lot of amateur bouts, was an Olympic silver medalist. Canelo ducks him for a while, finally fights him. Triple G wins that fight, gets screwed by judging, whether through just pure incompetence or malicious intent, And in the case of Adelaide Byrd, I'm more than willing to accept she was bought off. Never mind the fact that even in their first fight, scoring at a draw is a ludicrous scorecard, much less 118 to 112 for Canelo. I mean, it bordered on criminal. They booked the rematch. It gets postponed when Canelo has drug test issues. Now, I don't know whether that's him doping or Mexican beef, because he is Mexican and lives in Mexico, and Mexican beef is documented to deliver those particular types of results.
Kind of racist, but okay.
I mean, Chinese beef does it too. It's literally just where your beef is sourced. This is not about.
I mean, look. I mean, you should be more responsible about what you put in your body. Then.
I know, and I'm not. Again, my point being, in his case, I'm not necessarily on the he was doping train so much as there's just not enough.
He's a top. He's a big boxing star. He can afford a good nutritionist. He can afford healthy food and properly sourced food. Okay, like, come on here.
He should, but again, I'm not going to get it. But anyway, so we get to this fight, which was a great fight. Like, setting aside the crappy decision from last night, great fight. Genuinely great fight. But I had that, I think I was 7-5 for Triple G, and I was a tad generous to Canelo in one of those rounds. I'm not quite on board with 8-4, but there were some close rounds, but the scoring on that fight, not just Canelo winning, which I disagree with, but I imagine you might be able to make an argument he won 6 rounds. And he fought a great fight. Again, I'm not criticizing his performance. He fought a great fight. They both did. That was, again, tremendous fight. But for two of the judges to give him the 12th round, I feel almost exclusively to avoid another draw, is asinine because he did not win the 12th round. The individual scorecards for that are insane. They're all over the place. They're nuts. I mean, if I were Triple G, I might just retire because they clearly won't let you win against Canelo. There's too much politics involved in his success. And in fairness to Canelo, he's also a legitimately great boxer. He's not a product only of politics and hype. The man can
So
fight.
Who do you think won?
Oh, Triple G.
Okay. So do you think he got hosed by... Do you think the judges were on the take in both fights?
The first one, yes. This one, I don't think they were on the take this time so much as they had plenty of excuses to give it to Canelo. I mean, again, the first one, I have no earthly idea how Adelaide Byrd arrived at the scorecard she did.
Well, Adelaide Byrd is a blight on combat sports, so...
In this instance, we had a couple of... Oh, who was the one? David something or other. Last name starts with an M.
Are they going to have a third fight, or is
Probably.
This not enough?
I mean, look, these two match up well. They have great fights. I will happily watch them fight more. I enjoyed their first fight, which was not nearly as action-packed as their second.
Now, I'm just curious, like, what's the general media reaction and everything to that? Like, is the consensus feeling that Golovkin should have won?
The media ringside for this fight had it all for Golovkin or a draw. No one ringside scored that for Canelo. No one.
So at best for Canelo, it was a draw, is what the consensus seemed to be.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
Again, I had Golovkin. Everyone I know and talk to had Golovkin. If I'm Triple G, I would just make a public statement, something to the effect of, they clearly won't let me beat this guy.
Now, I have a
question.
Him. Even though we lost that fight, did the scores for McGregor versus Mayweather bother you, and how the judges scored that fight?
Yeah. I mean, the one who did not give a single round to McGregor, I thought was in error. And wasn't there one who gave...
I thought the consensus was that McGregor won the first 4, basically. Like the first basically all
the
McGregor.
First 3. I mean, I think most boxing aficionados gave Mayweather the second, but you gave McGregor 1 and 3, and then 4 a bit of a toss-up, and from there it was all Mayweather.
Okay.
But yeah, the one who said, because wasn't there one judge who just didn't give McGregor a single round, and I thought that was ludicrous.
Okay.
But
I mean, so look, it's not just MMA. It happens in boxing too.
It's really not. It's all sport. It's all combat sports, and it's
Yeah.
a real problem. But I wanted to bring that up because
As bad as it is, as we think it is in MMA, and like it made poor Pat Mullen had a meltdown over it. Seems to be happening. Boxing, which has been around for like how many centuries?
a lot, and again, it happens in all combat sports. If you're in the jiu-jitsu community, you know that jiu-jitsu scoring and a lot of the referees for that are wildly inconsistent as well. It's any combat sport that does not have really clearly defined criteria. Even wrestling, which has really defined criteria, has questionable calls on scoring from time to time. It happens.
Do you think Golovkin takes a tune-up fight later on, or do you think he'll go straight to a third fight with Canelo Alvarez?
I don't know. I might do a tune-up if I were him, but if they do, honestly, if I were him,
he had a fight. He had a fight before this latest one with Alvarez.
Yeah, because he was supposed to fight again. He was supposed to fight
Fought
Canelo on Cinco de Mayo.
Is it Venus or Veins?
I don't know. That was the fight that Canelo failed a drug test before.
Martirosyan?
Matrosian.
An Armenian fighter.
Yeah, Matrosian. I forget how to pronounce his first name.
Sorry.
Yeah, he was a late notice fill-in after Canelo failed that drug test, and he got murdered. Because Triple G kills people.
That was his tune-up fight, and
well, again, it was supposed to be an immediate rematch, but circumstances.
Who was the guy who had the loaded glove thing a while back?
I don't remember.
There was a high-profile boxer who had a loaded glove controversy, wasn't there?
Probably. I mean, that was actually one of the things I liked about the downtime on the pay-per-view for Triple G Canelo, because they had a stretch of 90 minutes to fill. Because all of their first 4 fights ended. There were like 9 rounds of boxing in those first 4 fights. They had a ton of time to kill, and they actually had they had Stitch actually. It was Stitch Duran, who they had do a brief segment talking about hand wrapping and how it's properly done and what it means when you overly stack a glove type thing or stack hand wrapping.
Might have been Antonio Margarito, who I'm thinking of.
That wouldn't really surprise me. Anyway, wanted to get that out of the way because it was a big combat sports thing that happened last night. So,
fair enough.
Moving back to MMA action, we touched on this briefly before, but I'll start us off with news with BJ Penn has officially signed to fight again for the UFC.
Oh, God.
And he will fight Ryan Hall.
No commission should regulate this.
That should not be saying. I mean, look, Hall's not a knockout artist, so there's
This is happening in Las Vegas. Like, what's going on down there?
I mean, Hall's a jiu-jitsu wizard who has a good kicking game, and he's not really a threat to.
He's a threat to BJ Penn in 2018. He could end BJ's life.
I mean, sure, but any UFC caliber fighter could end BJ's life at this point. It's a sad, sad thing.
Is Ryan Hall even a UFC caliber fighter?
Yes. He's a specialist in a lot of ways, but yes. I mean, he's 2-0 in the UFC. Because he beat Artem Lobov. Fight sucked, and Artem Lobov sucks, but he beat him to win that season of Tough. He beat Gray Maynard. And then everyone started ducking him because the Maynard fight was so unappealing to the casual observer. And he hasn't fought since then. But, yeah, again, if Artem Lobov's still in the UFC, Ryan Hall should still be in the UFC. Pretty definitively.
I'm not happy about this.
No, it sucks. That whole situation sucks. BJ shouldn't be fighting.
I get why BJ Penn is coming back, but like, why does the UFC have to enable it?
Because they can make money off of it, and they're under no ethical obligation.
But his health. Are they even going to make money off of this? I mean, come on.
I don't know. Is BJ still a draw?
I don't think it will. Like the Rory McDonald fight, like I can kind of see it, but I mean, this is like it's just sad.
I mean, wasn't he the main event when he fought Rodriguez? Because, yeah, he's on, what is it, 230? No, the 230 is the MSG card. They announced this. They announced the fight. What was it? Was it the finale? The tough finale? Or was it something else?
What's the one I think we still don't have a main event for 230, right?
Not not yet. The consensus seems to be they're going to announce it at the Mayweather Nurmagomedov press conference.
Let's see. Mayweather, you mean McGregor?
McGregor, sorry. Yeah, McGregor.
So that's the fight that's in New York. I assume it's going to be Valentina Joanna.
It's that or it's a terrible fight involving TJ Dillashaw. And I don't
really
say that...
Think get that fight together that quickly? Because that's... it's in less than 2 months.
Let me put it like this. Both Henry Cejudo's been making noise about it. Dominic Cruz has been making noise about having signed that fight. Both of which I don't want to see. Much as I love Dom, he's been off for 2 years, and his last fight was a loss.
Let me say this. If they make it Valentina versus Joanna for the vacant flyweight title, I think that would be a more than acceptable main event. I'd be very happy with that, if that's the main event. Or they can just go ahead and make Poirier-Diaz the main event and make that 5 rounds. And you know what, Robert? I'd be fine with that, too.
I would love that. Like, I would love those two to get fight for 5 rounds.
I would love to see Poirier embarrass Diaz for 5 rounds. Love it.
I want those two to have 5 rounds. I really do.
I mean, really, if you can't, why does it have to be for a title?
Because I generally agree with the point that we don't need a title fight to main event every pay-per-view.
Yeah, here's
why.
That's a huge fight.
Here's why they're going to in this instance. It ends in a 0 or a 5, which we ascribe a bit more value to, and it's in Madison Square Garden. I don't think they want to go to MSG without a title fight.
It's 230 though.
I'm just saying.
And it's not even and look, there are 2 canceled number pay-per-views that were never recovered. So it's not even a legit 230.
And they kept the same numeration, and that's what we're going with apparently.
Yeah, they kept them after Henderson versus Jones and Aldo versus Mendez were canceled, and they kept going, and they never changed the numbers back.
No, again, they just exist as canceled events, but they've
been canceled events that didn't happen. That doesn't count.
Oh, apparently Jimmy Manuwa just fell out of the fight with Thiago Santos.
Well, what?
And Eric Anders is stepping in to fight Santos in the main event.
Oh my god! I'm so sorry, Robert. You're the one I feel sorry for right now, not Jimmy Manuwa.
Yeah, that
sucks for you.
I mean, that event was going to suck for me anyway. That's not. There's no change there.
Now it's kind of like. Ugh.
I'll still go. I'll still go with Santos.
You'll soldier through it as you'll soldier through it.
I'll still go with Santos, but Anders presents some different problems than Manuwa. Some easier ones in some respects, but
all right.
All right. So again, there was 230 does not have a main event yet.
Conor McGregor, and good for him. I hope he takes Conor to the cleaners.
Yep.
This is you know what, we've seen some really frivolous lawsuits around combat sports, around pro wrestling. This is the opposite of a frivolous lawsuit. I'm sorry.
This one, I'm surprised Borg didn't jump in on this, unless he was satisfied with.
We have actual footage, but we have actual footage that UFC promoted, by the way.
Still using it to promote the upcoming event.
of him throwing a dolly into Michael Chiesa's face.
Into that bus window, yeah.
I mean, to me, that's pretty open and shut. Now, maybe he didn't intend to hit Chiesa, but does that really matter in a court of law?
It does in a criminal court. Since this is civil, it's not. It's less of a factor. There's some language that Chiesa used in the suit that is clearly designed to inflame passion rather than present a legal argument. He's going to have a hard time in some respects proving some of the damages he suffered, but I imagine he will be relatively successful.
He lost a fight. He lost part of his livelihood.
And a few months
later, all of
later,
this is documented.
And a few months later, he fought in a high-profile fight. If he's trying to prove actual loss of income,
but he lost income he was promised and due for that week. It doesn't. I mean, a few months. He was supposed to have that money that day that he lost because of Conor McGregor.
I'm not saying it's without merit, because I completely agree that this is absolutely, in my opinion, a meritorious lawsuit. But there's a few things that he has done in the interim that are going to make his lawyer's life a little bit more difficult.
Well, I hope this isn't a case of only the lawyers getting paid here. And I hope he has a lawyer who's not a scumbag. And I hope Chiesa takes McGregor to the cleaners. And I hope McGregor loses tons of money over this.
Oh, it was 230. It was 232 that BJ Penn and Ryan Hall are going to fight at.
Because quite frankly, Conor McGregor was not punished nearly enough for this incident. One of the, in Dana White's own words, the worst thing he's ever seen happen in this sport. So, Chiesa, you have my blessing. Take this jerk to the cleaners for everything he's worth.
Yeah, I have no problem with the lawsuit that Chiesa is bringing forward. We'll see how that plays out.
My only concern is that Chiesa might not make it that well out of this. That's my only concern.
Yeah, which is a valid one. They'll probably wind up with some kind of settlement.
Because of lawsuits, settlements, and lawyers being what they we know lawyers are blood-sucking scumbags. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. It's undeniable.
Oh yeah, there's a reason the profession has gained a bad reputation, and I believe standard fees for whatever this is going to wind up being, 30% of wwhatever's taken, of whatever the
look at
that.
Is. Look at that CM Punk Chris Amann lawsuit. And look at you don't have to look at all of them, but you can look at a couple of the transcripts to just see how comedically incompetent those lawyers are. And if you ask me why I have such a negative view of lawyers, that case is a pretty good example of why.
Yeah, there was some stuff going on there. I mean, I'm in a slightly different camp, mostly because I know a bunch of lawyers who I hold in very high esteem.
Not all. I'm not saying all, but there's a reason. What they showed AJ Lee some condemning text messages, and they were like text messages from Zack Ryder or some like they couldn't even get there at it was basically like they had Greta Van Susteren or someone from CNN doing their research, who's never watched wrestling a day in her life.
All right. So again, we had the Chiesa lawsuit. I want to say there was something else. Was there?
Joanna says she's been offered the Valentina fight. It's not official yet, but it looks like the UFC is clearly thinking about that fight.
Yeah, that's a good fight to make. Probably the best one they could, in all honesty, assuming all parties are amenable to it.
If that fight happens, who do you like?
Valentina.
Good call, I guess.
It's just how they match up stylistically. Valentina's too good a counter-striker, and Joanna's struck.
And to be honest, I don't think Nico Montano has asserted herself very well in the aftermath of all this.
No, not really, and
I mean, I'm just saying I'm not saying she was treated unfairly, but if she's trying to get me on her side, she has failed to do so with her statements.
Yeah,
because Valentina is the one who, to me, Valentina is the one who's really suffered through all of this. And she's not, it's like Nico Montano is not apologetic on any level. And that says a lot to me.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, that everything we wanted to touch on, or are we good to wrap up?
I mean, I'm good to wrap up unless there's anything you wanted.
No, I think that was everything I had.
Yep.
So, all right. On that note, what do you got to plug? Because I know you've, seen
my
stuff.
Review of The Predator, quite possibly the worst movie I've seen this year. It's easily the worst Predator movie I've ever seen. It outranks Alien vs. Predator and Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. And I do not say that lightly. The movie's an abomination.
You really think it's the worst thing you've seen this year?
Yes.
Did you see A Wrinkle in Time?
No.
Okay, that's fair. Because that's my standard for crappy movies.
I've seen some bad movies this year.
There have been some bad ones. There have been some really bad ones.
Brie Larson would agree with you, by the way, about A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh,
by the way,
terrible movie. Terrible movie.
Now, but this and the fact that Shane Black wrote and directed it, it's I can kind of see it, but the fact it's just so incoherent. It lacks cohesion. It's badly edited. It's badly shot. It looks stitched together. The movie's a mess. Nothing about it makes sense. They do the subplot with an autistic kid who's like a tech whiz and is brilliant. There's the worst moment in this movie by far, though, is when you have like this kid going trick-or-treating with a predator mask and gauntlet, like an actual predator mask that he gets, and he goes trick-or-treating with it, and it goes about as well as you would expect. And look, Stranger Things is a cool show, Robert, but like, why does everything have to imitate Stranger Things now? Like, I mean, seriously.
Because we live in a society that values imitation over genuine innovation.
Now look, Shane Black is supposed to be this celebrated writer. Like, why is he like just copying why is he copying Stranger Things?
Who knows?
Like, I don't get it. It's so weird to me. Well, the movie's horrible. Do you know I interviewed CM Punk?
I did.
I interviewed CM Punk. That interview is up right now. Check that out. Check out my review of Iron Fist Season 2. Check out my interviews with the cast of Iron Fist, the stars, Finn Jones and Jessica Henwick. Check those out. And there might be even some other stuff on the horizon. Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
I'll see you next week, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
All right, as for myself, you can find me this Tuesday on Damn You Hollywood. Mark Radulich and I will be reviewing The Predator. Yeah, not looking forward to that. So I haven't seen it yet, but I, of course, will before the actual review. So you can tune in for that. We actually have all... how much do I want to pimp this? Yeah, there's a few things that came out over this last week for the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. There's watch-along commentary for Superman Doomsday, and alternate commentary for Triple G versus Canelo 2. I believe Mark Radulich and Pat Mullen provide the alternate commentary for that. So if you're interested, you can give those a listen. You can just like the Radulich and Broadcasting Network Facebook page, and that's the best way to stay up to date on stuff that we're putting out. So please do that if you're so inclined. Next week we will review UFC Fight Night 137 and double check the dates. And that's it. Then on the 30th, we will have our preview for UFC 229. The long-awaited fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. the long-awaited return of Tony Ferguson. And that's about us. That's about all I can say for stuff that's all that interesting on this card. Dominic Reyes is fighting Ovince St. Preux. Derek Lewis and Alexander Volkov might not be terrible. I like Volkov, and Lewis has a better than average track record for watchable fights at heavyweight. Other than that, it's not a whole lot. Really not a whole lot, geez. Sergio Pettis and Jussier Formiga's not bad. Poor Pettis, man. Dude scores the biggest win of his career over Benavidez, should be in the title picture, but because Henry Cejudo will never defend the belt, and it doesn't help that Pettis was beaten by Cejudo, but still, just feels bad, man. All right, that's it for me. Again, we'll be back next week to review Fight Night 137. Should be fun. Until then, thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for your continued support. I hope one day to actually deserve it. See you next week. Until then, jeez, my outros need to get better. I know. Please don't bombard me with how crappy my outros are. I know. I really do. Stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.